So good morning, everyone. We're just going to give it a few seconds. We see you coming into the Zoom meeting. Hope everybody is well and safe.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to get started as people are coming into the room. So good morning, everyone. As we mentioned before, hope everybody is staying healthy, safe, and Long Island strong. We know that you are. Know that the HIA-LI is here with you, fighting this fight and disseminating a lot of critical information right now from not only the state and New York Forward, but the Suffolk County COVID Task Force. Primarily now talking about, obviously, phases of reopening and recovery. We've also put up a new coronavirus section on our website where you can really find all that information. And we are hosting a lot of virtual meetings like this to keep you involved through this. And again, go back to giving you critical information. We have been so proud of our members who have stepped up to the plate. Many of you have repurposed your plants, really giving out personal protective equipment. Many of you have really just reached out to help each other through this crisis. And I'm not surprised. So proud of really what our members have accomplished. And our Small Business Task Force is no exception to that. They have stepped up to the plate, and we're going to hear from Rita DiStefano, who is the co-chair of the Small Business Task Force, in a moment, and our facilitator this morning. They are really pumping out some phenomenal programming, critical programming, with this Get Back to Business series. This is part 2. We'll be talking about challenges in human resources, and there are many of them, you have told us, right, as our members. So can't thank the Small Business Task Force again enough, because they are not only some of our board members who really carry out our initiatives, could not do the work that we do without them. So thank you, Rita. Thank you to your group. I know many of them. I know Alan is one of the Small Business Task Force members. Many of them are listening this morning. I know you'll thank them as well. Thank you also to Tony Joy, who is their internal connection and really has done a lot of work in helping put a lot of these panels together. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to tell you all, just from a logistical standpoint, you'll see on your bottom of your screen a Q&A. So as we go through this, if you have any active questions, please just type them right into that Q&A. And if we do not get to them, we'll certainly follow up afterwards. So I am going to turn it over to Rita. As I mentioned, she is the chair of the Small Business Task Force. She's also a board member, and really contributes on a big level with us. So Rita is our moderator this morning. Thank you, Rita.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you so much, and congratulations to the HIA Force and what you've been doing through this crisis. It is our pleasure, the Small Business Task Force, to be able to put this program together. We know the pain that everyone is feeling, especially in human resources, which is my world, and the challenges that people are facing on a constant basis. I want to thank my Small Business Task Force committee, Alan Lapolis being one of them, Sue Gubing, Alana Zolfo, Joe Garofalo, and Karen Frank, for their efforts in helping put this together. This is series 2. We will be working on, probably starting tomorrow, what we want to do for series 3. But we do know that human resources and its challenges have been in the forefront of having people run their business. The rules and regulations that have been coming down from Albany and Washington are incredible, and they change on an hourly basis, and keeping up with them has been a real task. But congratulations to everyone. We're doing our best. And our panel today are people who are right in the forefront of all of this and can help us with some of the questions I know you have on your mind. And as Terry said, if we don't get to them all, and we probably won't because it's only an hour, Please write your questions down, and my task force will be sure to connect you with people or get the answers for you from this top panel of experts that we have today. So I'm going to introduce them one by one, and they will give you a short background of their expertise and what they're doing. We have a representative from an essential business, which would be Superior Washer and Gasket, and we have a representative from a non-essential business, which I really hate that word, but everyone that's working out there and not working is very essential. And we have somebody from safety, and we have somebody from HR. John Bauer, who is the guru and a very good friend to our HR committee, is our labor law attorney. So without further ado, I'm going to start with Alan Lipolis. Short introduction, Alan, who you are and what you do.
Good morning, everyone. Alan Lipolis. I am the president and CEO of Superior Washer and Gasket. Started in 1972. We are an essential business, and bottom line, very little has happened with us since we are classified as an essential business. We never lost any days. We did have some minor problems with people catching the virus. I have a facility here and in Rock Hill, South Carolina. 2 people in South Carolina, 1 person in here, but we're all back, and we're just trying to follow all the rules and follow all the CDC guidelines, and hoping to get some more information from the panelists today myself.
Thank you, Alan. We know that your input is going to be extremely valuable. You've lived through the essential part of the last 4
Yes.
months. It hasn't been easy. The next guest that we have is an expert in our safety, OSHA and CDC guidelines, which really are primary right now with people getting back to work in phase 4. I'd like to introduce to you Ron Loveland, who is the president of Summit Safety and Efficiency Solutions. Welcome, Ron.
Good morning, Rita. Thank you for having me on the panel. As you said, we're a manufacturing consulting company that helps manufacturers to improve safety, quality, and efficiency. We've been very busy on the health and safety side. We have certified safety professionals, industrial hygienists, and for a lot of companies, we've helped them with their reopening plans and making sure that they have everything top notch so that they can feel safe and their workers can feel safe. So thank you for having me on the board today.
Thank you so much, Ron. Next, I'd like to introduce, who may not need an introduction to a lot of our participants today, John Bauer, who is the office manager, shareholder of Littler Mendelson, and also an HIA board member, as Alan Lipolis is. Thank you so much, John, for being here. We know that there are going to be a lot of questions coming your way.
Thank you, Rita. Good morning, everyone. So just by brief way of background, I am a labor and employment lawyer representing management. I've been doing that now for over 30 years, remarkably, on Long Island. And yeah, this has been, I'm working from home, have been for the last 4 months, which is incredible. When first day I left the office, I thought it would maybe would be 2 weeks. Took a few notepads with me. I've now had to make a few trips to Staples because I ran out of notepad for a short while. But in any event, we've been busy. I've been busy, my firm's been busy advising clients on the very issues that we're going to be discussing today. And so I look forward to it.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, I want to introduce Matt Silva, who's the Chief Operating Officer at the Crescent Beach Club. Matt, as I said to you before, all our backgrounds are very, very different than yours. We all wish we were with you on the beach at your club. But anyway, welcome, and give us a little bit background of what's going on in your quote unquote non-essential company that is now getting back to work in phase 4.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Silver. So we're the Crescent Beach Club. We're a restaurant and a catering facility. We were basically shut down, when everything got shut down, and we've been slowly reopening. The restaurant got open on June 10th for outside dining, which was really worked well for us, but is still a major challenge. And as of yesterday, we got 50 people for events. We've moved 130 plus weddings and events our industry is being very, very, it's been very challenging throughout this time. Clearly, what we do, which they're calling gatherings, makes it, you know, really hard for social distancing, really hard for all the rules and regulations that, you know, are in place for COVID. So we're managing through it, and we're going to do the best we can.
Thank you so much, Matt. We feel, as I said before, we feel the pain of the non-essential, the essentials, what human resources professionals have had to deal with the legislation coming down on an hourly basis, having to figure out what's right and what's wrong. We're all in it together. The first question I have, John Bauer, I think is one of the most, a lot of this is coming through, and probably our essential and non-essential people will understand why I'm asking this first. But how do the people, our employers, respond to employees who are able to return to work, but they're fearful of returning to work? What are the rights of some of our employers with regard, and how do they handle that situation?
Well, thank you, Rita. So, and that is an important question. We're getting that question a lot from our clients. And the first thing, and again, I mean, you presuppose that they're otherwise able to come back to work, but the reason why they don't want to come back or are fearful could be very relevant. But in general, it's absolutely critical that the employer be following all the safety and health guidelines mandated by the state, federal government. The state has issued pretty specific guidelines for each industry in terms of what they need to do from a safety and health standpoint. And I know Ron can probably talk about this a little bit as well. But that's the first thing. Because you want to be able to say to those employees, and this is usually what we advise, before trying to, strong arm them or force them, is to let them know all of what you're doing as an employer to protect them. So the measures that you're taking, explain it to them, that, the social distancing that's going to be going on, the fact that masks are going to be required, the fact that, there's sanitizer, all over the place, the fact that, you've got other protocols in place to keep people apart. All that needs to be explained to those employees to make them feel comfortable that it's safe to go back into the workplace. So that's number one. Explaining that number one is having the protocols actually in place, and then being able to explain that to the employees who are fearful. If people are fearful because they have a medical reason, a legitimate medical ailment that can make them more susceptible, for instance, diabetes or some other immune compromised disease, they may have a protected disability then under the ADA and under New York State law. And so if that's the reason they're fearful, then you may have to go down that road to find out if there's a reasonable accommodation, which may be allowing them to continue to work from home depending on what their job is. It could be a childcare issue where they're not necessarily fearful, but they would normally have a child in summer camp or some type of summer program, which is not available now. So now they need to stay home to take care of the child. If that's the case, they may be entitled to protected leave under the federal coronavirus leave act. So the reason why they don't want to come back is very important. If it's not childcare, if it's not because they have a medical issue, but it's simply they're fearful in general of coming back to work, and the employer has done all they're supposed to do in terms of the guidelines, and they've explained all that, and the person still just says, I don't want to come back to work, well, then there really are no protections at that point for the employee. And the employer can say, well, look, you can stay out on leave unpaid. They wouldn't be entitled to unemployment at that point in time. Or they, if it gets to the point where the employee absolutely refuses, they could probably be terminated under those circumstances. And hopefully it doesn't get to that if you do the other stuff that I talked about. But at the end of the day, if they're otherwise healthy and are able to come back to work, and the employer is doing all they're supposed to do from a health and safety standpoint, then the employees have to come back to work.
And John, thank you so much for that. I think you've cleared up a lot, but as in the past and as always, you would recommend if there's any physical problem, any kind of mental or physical problem, that the employer does get physician documentation to back up all of these issues, so that it's something that you could work from and have something documented on file, and then go forward with all of the accommodations that you need to make.
Just like you would under any, in the normal case where someone says they can't do their job or a particular aspect of their job because of a physical or a mental, problem or disability. Yes, you would then ask for medical documentation.
You need medical documentation.
Yes, and then go down that, road of the interactive process to see if there's a way of accommodating them, which, as I said, maybe continuing to allow the person, depending on what their job is, to stay out, and not stay out, but to continue working from home. Before all this happened,
After they give you the medical documentation, or if there is no medical documentation, just fear, remote work might be an answer, depending on the position, or leave of absence.
If it's just fear and there's no medical issue, and the employer is doing all they're supposed to do from a health and safety standpoint, as I said, you can allow the person to work from home if they still can, and the employer, will allow them to do so, but they wouldn't be obligated under those circumstances.
Thank you so much, John. I think you cleared up a lot, but you did lead into another question, which I think is very important. And Ron, I think this is for you. People are coming back to work, and John alluded to the fact that, are you doing all of the right things? You don't want to get into trouble if you're not following the OSHA guidelines, the CDC guidelines, and providing all of the things that are necessary for people to come back and work in the workplace. So the question to you would be, what additional safety measures do we need to take as employees return to work to make them feel safe within the workplace?
Yeah, thank you, Rita. So you mentioned, federal guidelines, OSHA, CDC. Actually, at the state has really put out the most restrictive guidelines. They put out mandates, whereas OSHA has just put out guidelines. So if you take a look at the New York State Department of Health requirements that come out of Governor Cuomo's office, let's just kind of step through all the things that businesses should be doing. First of all, you're required to have a written reopening plan. Okay. If you need help with that, we've helped a lot of companies. Otherwise, there's also outlines on the New York Forward website for any type of business to be able to step through all those different items that you should be doing. So let's start the front door, right? First thing you should be doing is screening, right? Making sure that you get everybody's information so you can contact them should there be an exposure, for contact tracing after the fact. But you should be taking temperatures. You should be having a health questionnaire. How are you feeling today? Have you been exposed at the beach or at home, so that you can protect the rest of your workforce? The second thing, like John said, is, you need physical distancing, right? So a lot of our customers have removed desks, have removed spaces. They have, maybe even closed the conference room or closed the cafeteria to make sure that people maintain physical distancing. The next thing is protective equipment, right? You've heard you got to wear a mask, right? You have to wear a face covering. So that's kind of basic. And then beyond that, there may be other protective equipment you have to make depending on the circumstance in your company. Hygiene, right? You have to make sure that people are washing their hands, that you have hand sanitizers, that you're cleaning the facility, right? Cleaning and disinfecting the facility. Another little thing is, like, you know what, guys, no more food parties, right? No more pizza parties, no more buffet dinners. Everybody has to bring their own food so that you remove that exposure from sharing food. Communication is really important. That's another item. You know, you need to have placards up about the COVID, how to protect yourself, you know, covering your sneeze, washing your hands, keeping your distance. The other thing is you have to, you know, make sure that you're screening folks. And if you do have some type of exposure, you have to make sure they're isolated. And, you know, recently we also heard from the state that if you have people going away on vacation, if they go to a hot spot, now they need to quarantine for 14 days before they come back. And I'm sure John's got some comments about, okay, how do you handle somebody now that on their own volition expose themselves? So those are kind of the basics, you know, screening, physical distancing, wearing a mask, hygiene, hand washing, cleaning, disinfecting, communication.
Well, that's a wonderful and a great rundown. And I know the questionnaire has been a real issue for a lot of my clients with regard to the fact that you must now get some kind of an input from each and every employee as they enter the building every day. And my clients have become very, very creative with that. Some of them have had paper questionnaires. Some have involved technology with regard to apps and whatever, keeping a log of all that. And Alan, I know, and Matt, this has probably created some kind of issues with regard to setting that up in place. But have you found any problems with the re-entry with regard to all of the new regs that Ron has just laid out? How difficult has it been for either one of you? I know, Matt, your people are just coming back. Alan, you've been dealing with this for the last 4 months.
Yes, we really, I guess we've been very, very fortunate since we've never closed. But what we did is the first thing we did was we made sure we communicated with every one of our employees and explaining the situation, and it's for their health, their protection, as well as everyone's protection. We showed them the changes we've made from the minute you enter the facility till when you leave. We show them exactly what we're doing as far as sanitizing everything on a daily basis. We've given everybody the personal protective equipment that they need, the masks, the hand sanitizers. So we've gone over everything. And fortunately for me, my employees are very thankful that they're working, and we were classified essential as opposed to not essential, which makes no sense to me. But anyway, everybody's essential as far as I'm concerned. But we assured our people that we were constantly doing and following the CDC guidelines. And all our supervisors, we told them to make sure that they follow these things, because during breaks, during lunch hours, you know how people congregate. We make sure that that doesn't happen. We make sure that all our supervisors who walk around have the face masks, using face masks. And it's worked out very well. We've had one minor problem up here in New York facility, 2 down in South Carolina, but they're all back after quarantining, and everything is, we're fortunate, I have to say that.
That's wonderful. And you followed all the guidelines, and I think the culture of the company, when people knowing you're trying to do the right thing, really helps.
Right, and every day they have to sign a document stating, again, set up by your firm, since you're my HR firm that we use, the mandatory measures that they have to take, and they have to sign the documentation. And if there is ever a yes, or there's, you know, something in violation, then we pull them out and we go over the whole thing. But fortunately, we haven't had any problems as of yet.
I'm happy to hear that. And I think one of the other questions that comes up, John and Matt and Alan, maybe you want to get in on this too, is during this pandemic, employers have had to hire people, and they're very, very leery on the questions they can ask, health questions they can ask about new people coming into the company. If they're interviewing, what are some of the questions? Maybe John, you can help on this, and then Matt and we can find out, and Alan, just that they've had those problems, and what are the legal rights in asking questions, health questions, which are a big taboo in human resources for any other position. What stance do we take today in protecting our company, and how we ask these questions, John?
Well, it's, yeah. The old normal, of course, you cannot ask health questions at all. I mean, it wasn't even an issue. You know, there was some opportunities under very limited circumstances, but generally speaking, you couldn't. And obviously, we're not in normal times. And the EEOC has come out and said, in these times, there are health questions you can ask, and it's essentially the same questions that you can ask of your employees, some of which I think have been alluded to. But it's things like, it's the questionnaires, you know, that have been created based on the guidelines from the CDC and the state and the New York State requirements. And Ron's right, the New York State's very specific about what they require. Several pages of detailed guidelines. For those of you out there who aren't familiar with the New York Forward website and the guidelines and the requirements of New York State, you must visit that. It's by industry, it's by phase, and there's a ton of information there. The health and safety plan, there's a template that you can use. You got to fill it in. You need some information to do that, but it's all there in order to do that. But for people who you're looking to hire, you can ask things like, within the last 14 days, have you been in close contact with anyone who's being diagnosed with COVID-19? Within the last 14 days, have you been in close contact with anyone who has been advised to self-quarantine because of COVID-19? Have you tested positive for COVID-19 or been diagnosed as positive? You can ask about whether they're experiencing any of the symptoms. The symptoms are, you know, the list has grown, interestingly. You know, when this first happened, the CDC, you know, had about 4 or 5 symptoms. There's now about 12 symptoms. They're on the CDC website. You can ask if anyone has those symptoms. Now, you can also ask about travel. You know, to any of the states now that New York has prohibited, not prohibited, but New York has said if you go to any of these states, you have to self-quarantine for 14 days. You can ask whether anyone has visited any of those states within the last 14 days. And if they have, now, by the way, if anyone answers yes to any of these questions, that doesn't mean you exclude them from being considered for employment. It just means you may now have to ask some follow-up questions if they answer yes to any of those questions. You know, if someone says yes, they've tested positive COVID, well, it may have been 3 months ago, and they're perfectly fine now. Or it may have been, you know, a week and a half ago, which is a different, you know, different situation. So, same thing with if someone has a symptom. Well, what's a symptom? Well, one of the symptoms is a runny nose. Okay, you know, those of us with allergies, that's pretty standard. So there may be perfectly legitimate explanations for some of the answers that you get, but you're allowed to ask those questions. Someone's traveled to one of these states where they weren't supposed to within the last 14 days. You can tell them, you know, we can't consider you right now, and come back after the 14-day period is up. So anyway, so you can basically ask a new hire the same questions that you can ask of a current employee.
So John, when we have a question from one of our participants, so those questions are legal to ask for anyone, number one, who works in your building every day. That questionnaire can be handed out and they attest to the fact of what they're saying. And number two, the questionnaire is asked for anybody coming, whether it be a visitor or a interviewee. That questionnaire can be given to them and they can answer that, whereas usually we could not ask her any health questions. So that's all
Yes.
very okay now to do.
But
Yes.
you also have to be aware of the HIPAA requirements to make sure that you're not broadcasting this information to say, hey, Sally just
Correct.
had COVID. So that's one thing you just gotta watch out for, yeah.
It's got to be, yeah, all that's got to be done
We
confidential,
haven't
no
addressed
doubt. And that's an ADA requirement. Any health information has got to be kept confidential.
Exactly, a very good point. So the answer is yes, you can give that questionnaire, have it signed, keep it on file, and I think the government is now requiring that you keep a log as well. Matt, we haven't forgotten you.
It's all good. I'm here. I'm listening.
Palm trees in the background. We're all leaving and coming to your place after this.
You got it.
And we want our Bloody Marys for sure.
No problem.
You've got a flood of people now coming back into your workplace. So you've probably had a lot of downtime and things to consider before you opened up in phase 4. One of the things that you may need to face as people are coming in is, do you still need the same staff that you've had? Is everything going to remain the same as far as how many people you need, since now indoor dining is right now at 50 people, but who knows if that goes down or up? Have you faced any of these challenges yet with returning employees, whether who you might need coming back? Are there any issues that you want to share with us for a non-essential business that's been a little bit out of the fold for the last 4 months?
Or ignored. Yeah, I mean, we've taken a lot of the precautions just like we've been talking about. I mean, the employees are all temperature checked when they come in. They fill out the questionnaire form. Where we've kind of had to do some things that are different for what we do since the restaurants opened, you know, we got that outdoor dining on June 10th, is we actually have a security guard that we don't let the guests walk in the building. So normally when you go to a restaurant, you check in at the hostess stand, and there's a bunch of people at the hostess stand all waiting to, be seated. So now we're actually having a security guard that stays outside, that people are waiting outside. So when they walk inside, they don't walk inside without a mask, and then they're going in one at a time to be seated to keep people separate and making sure there's no crowds of people and so on and so forth. So on our end, besides the employee side, because our building is obviously more of a public type building, we have to deal with the challenges of the public and making sure that they're adhering to the guidelines, which is not easy for a business like mine or any similar business to mine, because you have people that feel, although it's the law to wear a mask, I don't want to wear a mask. And, there's been multiple times since we've been open where I've had to tell people, listen, this is the law, this is the rules. If you can't wear the mask, then you're not welcome to dine here. And, it's not an easy place to be, because now you become a police officer. And it's hard. But on the employee side, everybody's been really receptive. I mean, everybody wears the masks, and we chose not to do gloves. I believe that the gloves are actually less sanitary than hand sanitizer and washing your hands. So we've gone that route instead. And I think a lot of the restaurants are doing that now, because as more and more places, you realize that they wear the same gloves all day long. They don't change them as often as they should, because they think they're safe, where it's much better to sanitize after you do each thing, or wash your hands every half hour, and so on and so forth. But overall, I mean, it's the big challenge for us is going to be, and in people that are in the non-essential business as far as the hospitality industry goes, is as our buildings get open and as they were able to accommodate more people, it's keeping everybody safe. It's keeping everybody comfortable. And you have people all over the spectrum. You have people that are very comfortable, and then you have people that walk in and then want a tape measure to make sure the tables are 6 feet apart. I mean, I've seen it all. So
I'm sure that you have faced that. And I need to, and you brought up something about guests coming in that may not want to wear a mask, but maybe John, you want to get in on this, or Alan. What about an employee who refuses to follow the directions, and I'm not wearing that mask today, I can't breathe, or I can't, I'm not comfortable, I'm not wearing the mask. How do we handle that, John?
Well, again, it depends on the reason. If it's simply an aversion to wearing masks because they're against it, they think it's political in some way, shape, or form, but they just won't wear a mask, they don't have a right to do that. It's like any other work rule. This is the rule to work in our facility. And by the way, it's the law right now. And if they won't wear it, they can't stay in the workplace, and they should be disciplined, written up, just like you would for any other workplace violation. And if they continue to violate it, ultimately terminated for, not following policy or for insubordination. It's pretty cut and dry as far as I'm concerned. Now, if the reason they can't wear the mask is a medical reason, it's a different story. That gets us back into the ADA analysis. And then you have to then go into a reasonable accommodation analysis. Is there a way to accommodate this person who literally, legitimately has a medical reason that prevents them from wearing a mask? And there are some people out there who are like that. Perhaps allowing that person to continue working from home if possible. Another thing that you could do, and I've had clients do this, is they've obtained quantity of face guards, and they've, instead of a face mask, which the person said they couldn't wear because of a medical reason, they've offered them the opportunity as an accommodation to wear a face guard, which covers the entire face, but it's open on the bottom, so you can breathe a lot easier. So that, again, it depends on the reason. If it's simply an aversion to wear a mask because they don't like it, as opposed to a medical reason, you can discipline them and ultimately terminate them if they won't follow the rule.
Thank you, John. I think that's another important issue. A lot of people are facing that. Employers that are refusing to follow the CDC rules, but are putting everybody around them at risk as well. And Ron, are there any other issues that you have found that have been a challenge for employers with the safety issues, as far as masks or anything like that? Have you found that your clients have been coming to you with any difficult safety measures? Because I know you deal a lot with manufacturing, but you're also in the offices as well.
I think the biggest challenges John was alluding to is the discipline. You got some people that just don't want to wear the mask. Some of them are a little difficult to breathe with. If you're exerting yourself, it's a challenge. But there's other ways to do it. There's face guards you could use. There's other ways to cover your face and meet the requirement. And as John says, you may have to make some accommodations for people who have breathing issues and allergies, whatever it might be. And if that's the case, then you have to separate them, right? They have to be, okay, now you're assigned to the warehouse and you have to work by yourself in this back corner, as opposed to being on a machine shoulder to shoulder with somebody else in the operation. So it's, business people are smart, they're innovative, they figure out ways to get things done. Certainly the plastic dividers between workstations are helpful. But then as soon as you step away from the machine and you go to the bathroom, if you're not wearing a mask, then that's an issue for people. So it's something that you have to monitor. We have some customers that have over 1,000 employees, and they're watching the cameras. They're watching the security cameras and make sure that people are distancing. And if they're not, that they're out there saying, hey, this is the rule. You got to make sure you're wearing your mask, keeping your distance, washing your hands, etc.
Well, you said something important, Ron, about discipline. Let's not forget the old rules. We all have handbooks, and people may have issues with the new rules and safety and all that, and we totally understand that. But that doesn't preempt the use of disciplinary action for those employees who may be putting other people at risk. So I think that it's important to keep everybody consistent and disciplined with what you expect with the new guidelines, because you cannot allow one person not to wear a mask and then have to have everybody else. There needs to be a good reason. So disciplinary action, John, I'm sure you're going to agree with that.
And that includes, by the way, Rita, that includes the leadership as well. So
Right.
I've seen that where, you had the leadership telling everyone they had to do it, yet they were walking around without a mask. And
Yeah, you do that
that
viral
creates an
thing on
enormous
Dairy
problem.
That's
Matt?
one thing I do. First of all, we do offer, having both office and factories, we offer both the face masks and the face shields. Some people who don't like the masks use the shields, and that's what we do. But when I walk around and all my supervisors walk around, we all have our face masks. And again, as you said, it starts from the top, and
Yes.
there's no question about it.
Agreed.
That's a very good point. Matt, did you want to add to that?
Oh, no, I was just saying, did you see that viral video from the Dairy Queen where all the workers were wearing a mask and then the supervisor or the manager wasn't wearing a mask?
Is it? Oh,
And it was like, it was just crazy. It was, you know,
I missed that one, but it's obvious that leadership, it comes from the top. That was a very good point. One of the other questions that I'm getting, and I don't know if Alan or Matt have faced this, and John, you want to weigh in on it. The staff doesn't look the same anymore. The overhead has to be cut. We need to make payroll, and certain people have to go, and layoffs are imminent. And I know in non-essential workers, furloughs and layoffs, they're out there waiting to come back off of unemployment. I don't know, Alan, if you've had that. I mean, I'm pretty sure you've been in business for the last 4 months, and I'm not sure, Matt, if you're facing this. But how does a company safely approach the layoff system? How do they stay safe in having some people come back and others not coming back, and staying within the legal guidelines of how to do this the right way without litigation?
I think that's more of a Matt question because, as I said, as an essential, I've never had to lay off anybody or nobody had to go home. So it's more the non-essential companies who have had the people away than coming back.
Yeah, Matt, are you facing that?
I mean, we're going to be dealing with that for the next 12 to 18 months here. I mean, you know, we've moved over $4.5 million in events from this year to next year. So, I mean, our overall, I don't even want to call it profitability because that's not even in existence for this year. But, you know, overall sales is down by, 70 or 80% for the year.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, we're just going to deal with it on a case-by-case basis. We're a very seasonal business. Obviously, we're on the beach. It's a beautiful spot. We do, in 6 months, we do pretty much our entire year's worth of business. And we will have lost, somewhere between 4 and 6 months of that business. So we're going to take it on a case-by-case basis. I mean, I've had most of my staff has been with me for years. I have chefs and workers that have been with me for 20 plus years. I've never put anybody on unemployment, but this is a situation that's, well out of my control. So we're just going to work it through to the best of our ability and, just hopefully get back up and going as quickly as possible once we're allowed to.
John, is there a rule of thumb to follow to keep the company safe with regard to who goes and who stays?
Well, yeah, well, I don't know. I wouldn't say there's a rule of thumb, but there are certain things you want to consider in any layoff. I mean, not just now. I mean, people, companies have always experienced layoffs for one reason or another. I'm not saying every company, but in general, companies, in this country and in this state have had layoffs for, as I said, forever. And the same rules apply. I mean, and where companies get in trouble or where, where we've seen lawsuits in the past, and I suspect we're going to see them again, are around discrimination issues, where, the allegation is that the people that were laid off or not recalled are, more heavily against certain protected groups, like older people, for instance, like people of a certain race or a certain national origin. Those are the classic issues that we've always seen, and those are the things you have to be careful about. You need to ask yourself, because a defense to any discrimination claim is that the action you took was based on some legitimate reason unrelated to the alleged discrimination. So, what you need to ask yourself in any layoff or not, who you're going to recall is, how would you justify this? If you were called on this and was sued, and your answer is, well, it wasn't because this person's race, or it wasn't because of their age, it was because of this, then how would you prove this? Could you prove it? And so if the answer is, we brought back the people in each position who were our best workers, our best performers, which is legitimate, then you would hope that if you were called on the carpet and had to prove it, that you'd have evidence that these people were your best workers. Hopefully you'd have evaluations written, disciplinary actions and stuff like that. Now, that's the best case scenario. Can't tell you how many times I've seen companies say that. And then when I looked at the evaluations, and Rita, you've seen this as well, that everyone has great evaluations. And, there's really no distinction between people. So it gets hard then to prove that, that was the rationale, and that there wasn't some, discriminatory rationale for what happened. Another way to do it is just to use an objective measure. You do it by seniority. You get rid of, if you need to lay off, the least senior, and when you're recalling, you bring back the most senior first. That's an objective measure. And if you're consistent with doing it, then that's non-discriminatory. It's a legitimate objective measure. If that's the real reason and that's how you did it. The problem with that, though, is it's not always going to get you the people that you want. It doesn't get you your best workers necessarily. So you just have to be careful and mindful of these issues when you're making those decisions.
So being careful, even in this day and age, is also something you have to take into effect when laying people off. And to look at your list to make sure it's not discriminatory, making sure that people are, that you're doing the right thing with regard to who stays and who goes. So that's very important. Matt, as you go forward, you and everybody who goes forward with this particular problem has to still take a look at the reason that they're letting people go. And I think, John, you mentioned performance reviews and all of those things that count when you are terminating an employee for one reason or another. Let's not forget that that performance reviews should still go on, especially for essential workers or non-essential, if they've worked remotely. How is their work still going on? How have they behaved during this downtime period? All of this is still very important. And the other thing that's important, I don't know, Matt and Alan, if you've faced this, probably, Alan, you haven't because you've had your people there. But Matt, as people return, there's going to be a whole bunch of unused vacation time that's available that they have not taken since they've been on furlough, and it's still there in the bank. And a lot of my clients are wondering how other companies are going to be creative enough to have people take their vacation time because it's all backed up now. It is still due them. Have you thought of anything like that? Because let's face it, even the quarantine that's going on now poses a problem with vacations. So a person comes back after 3 months of being out, has 3-4 weeks vacation on the books, and my clients are facing that problem. Do you have any creative ideas on that, Alan or Matt or John or anyone?
Well, what we do is, first of all, it's important that every company has an employee handbook. That's the first thing. And you put down your rules and regulations. And what we do with our vacation time is, depending on whether you get up to 2 to 5 weeks, depending on how long you've been here, you can only carry over 1 week. That's all we allow them to do. So if they don't use it, they lose it. So and it's important that people do take vacations. It's important that they get away from the everyday job. There's no question about it. So that's what we do. And now, especially, even though we are an essential company, business has been down, and business isn't as strong as it was. And we try to make our people take their vacations, now, and yet we ask them to take it now, and there's no place for them to go but to sit home. So it is a little bit of a problem, but they do know that they have to take it by the end of the year. And if not, then what we do, our backup is between Christmas and New Year's. We can make it a mandatory closing, the company, and those who have time get paid. Those who don't have time don't get paid. I do try to avoid that, but we try to be forward with all our employees, and I think that's what's made us a very successful company, by being forward with them, and we communicate with them.
Well, communication is very, very important. And I think with regard to vacations now that are spilling over, handbooks do say what you can and cannot do, but there may be some extra steps you may want to take to extend, maybe taking a two-week vacation into 2021. But being creative is really the case here. Matt, have you had any of these problems yet, or are you thinking about what I'm saying because it's going to come up?
Yeah, no, we really haven't had too many problems. Our business this time of year doesn't usually take vacation. So most people take it January, February, or November and December. So I think we'll be okay on that end here. But yeah, I mean, all these challenges are going to come up for all the different businesses. And I think every business has to look at what's going to be the best scenario for them that's going to fit into the guidelines of New York State and OSHA and all that other stuff, so that they don't end up in a situation where somebody says they weren't treated fairly. I mean, this is the challenges of being a business owner and managing through them to the best of your ability in these hard times. I mean, every situation is changing. It's just like everyone's saying, it's just the new normal.
I just want to caution everyone that if you do make exceptions to one, you have to make exceptions to everyone.
Yes.
Very good point, Alan. John will agree. Consistency is everything. Correct, John?
Yes.
Yes. So I think, Rita, your question was more geared toward companies that had furloughed people
Yes.
and were not taking vacations because they were furloughed, and now have all this time that they had accrued. And now we're coming, as things get back to normal, hopefully they're back to work, and now they're accruing more, and it's pushing up against the end of the year, and they've got all this time. And what do you do about that? Now, the first thing under New York law is if it's accrued, you can't take it away. You can't just take it away if it's already been accrued. Now, Alan's right. If you have a handbook and your rule is that if you use it, you lose it, that's fine. But in the absence of that, if people have not, if they have accrued it, you can't take it away from them. And now, if you have a rule that says you have to use it by the end of the year or you lose it, the problem that companies are going to run into, if people say, okay, fine, then we're taking it, you're not going to have any employees.
Exactly.
So many people are going to have to take
You
off.
don't want to have nobody in the office at the end of
Right.
the year.
So again, in Alan's situation, it's a little different because people have been working all along and presumably have been taking vacations like they normally would. Maybe not, because you really couldn't travel anywhere. But what I'm seeing companies do are things like paying out for some of it. So they're not going to lose it, but the company can't allow everyone to take it at the same time. So then they're going to pay out some of that vacation time. Another thing that I'm seeing companies do is they are getting a little more flexible, and they're saying, we will allow you to carry over some time or more than we did previously, as long as you use it within the first 6 months of the next year, because otherwise you're going to get that backlog at the end of this year. So these are some of the things that I'm seeing some companies do.
Thank you, John. That's exactly where I was going. You're going to have an office full of nobody by the end of the year. Okay, well, we have talked our way up to practically the end of our presentation, but I do want to give each of our panelists, who have been absolutely wonderful, and I'm hoping to our audience that we have struck some kind of answers to some of the urgent questions they have. But I'd like to ask our panelists in a brief summary, last minute, that what else they would like to talk about, and so then we can wrap this up. Alan, let's start with you, and you want to wrap this up and anything you need to add to what you've already said.
No, I think, I've got the information that I've needed, hearing from John and Ron and Matt. Unfortunately, being non-essential, that's you're in a tough business. There's no question about it. But if everybody follows the rule, and again, communication, if you communicate with your people and follow the guidelines and set an example, you should have no problem.
Good advice. John, final comments?
Well, look, I think, well, I mean, summarize everything in a minute or so, it's not easy, but I think the most important thing is that companies that are operating and reopening need to follow the guidelines, especially for the employers in New York State, the state guidelines. I said it earlier, Ron said it. You know, the New York Forward website has a ton of information. The actual requirements are spelled out. Every employer needs to have a safety and health plan. It's mandatory. You have to post it. You have to certify on the website to the state that you're following the guidelines. These are the things you need to do if you're going to protect yourself from liability down the road. Because if you're not doing these things, then you're opening yourself up to liability from vendors, visitors, employees, etc. So following those guidelines is the absolute most critical thing as far as I'm concerned.
Good advice, John. Very good advice. Ron, what would you summarize in your very important presentation?
I agree. Wash your hands, keep your distance, you wear your protective equipment, wear your mask, and clean and disinfect your operation. You know, make it a place that people want to come to, they want to work at. Make it inviting, because the biggest issue I've heard from manufacturers is I can't get people to show up. You know, they're afraid to show up. They're afraid to come to work. They're afraid to get exposed, or they've had exposure and can't come. But you know, if you just have to do all the right things, and as Alan says, you have to communicate that, let people know what you're doing so that they feel safe and they feel protected. The other thing I want to mention was, if you have an exposure in your organization, you know, make sure you isolate and quarantine those folks. You're required to notify the health department, both your county and your state health department, and you have to make sure that you follow up with these folks to make sure that they're taking the right precautions. But
Good.
thank you for allowing me to be on the panel. I enjoyed the conversation today.
Thank you so much, Ron. Very good advice. Matt, your final words? Matt, are you there?
I mean, I think everyone, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, well,
Yes.
what I lost you.
Yeah,
Well-
no, I don't have, I mean, thank everybody for their time, and thanks. You know, it's our business is a little bit different. I mean, we've really have some struggles ahead, but the key is really communicating with both your employees and your customers. Because on my end, I mean, we have more customers than we have employees
I agree.
and making them aware of all the safety precautions and everything to keep them safe and
I
make them
think
feel
you do have a
comfortable.
lot more
And
challenges.
you know, we have people all the time that have come in and told us, wow, we really feel comfortable being here. You know, and that's our goal. Our goal is to make the customers feel comfortable so they want to come back and enjoy what we do, and that'll in turn make it better for the people that are working here. So hopefully we'll see you all at the restaurant.
Well, good luck to you as you reopen, Matt. I've been to your place. It's absolutely beautiful, and we will return again. I can't thank our panel enough. You did an incredible job. I'm hoping that we answered. There are so many more questions, but an hour is only an hour. But I think we hit on some very important questions, and I hope that our audience is appreciating some of the information that we have imparted to them. I'm going to now turn this back over to Tony Joy, who will close up the presentation. And again, thank our panel so very much for their time. Tony Joy?
Thank you, Rita.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank you again. You know, on behalf of the HIA-LI, thank you so much, Rita, for doing a wonderful job moderating this distinguished panel that we had this morning. Some really great takeaways and critical information, I think, for all the members and everybody who joined us. So thank you all again. After this, once we close out of our meeting today, there will be a short survey that we ask our attendees to please complete. It helps give us an idea of what type of programming and things that we can help to bring you information to help give you as we move along. So please make sure that if you can, fill that out after the program today. Just a couple upcoming programs that we did want to mention. On Monday, July 13th, we have a CEO forum featuring Paul Pachter, the CEO of Long Island Cares. A great opportunity to kind of get in the head of a CEO, understanding what type of ways his organization has been impacted and his leadership style throughout. So certainly if you can join us, we invite you to do so. We do have a new and prospective member information meeting coming up on Thursday, July 16th. If you are a current member or if you're potentially looking at membership, it's a great opportunity to learn about how to maximize your HIA-LI membership and the benefits and ways to get involved. So, you'll hear from all the staff and getting some really great information through that program. And then on July 22nd, we have How Will Tourism and Travel Change in the New Norm? So this is another, if you're looking to travel, I know we talked about kind of vacations and everything. So if you have any of those coming up, learning about and hearing about travel precautions, anything, if you're staycationing, kind of what to do on Long Island. So certainly invite you also to join us for that. And we do have a number of other programs in the near future too. So please continue to check our HIA-LI website calendar to be informed and to keep an eye out for some new programming. So, so with that, I again just want to thank everyone. Thank you to our wonderful panel. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And I hope you all stay safe and healthy, and we'll hopefully join us again soon for our next program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good day. Stay
Bye.
safe.
Bye-bye.